Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen. Procedural Tech and Tools is how Star Citizen will create its massive gameplay area. But what exactly does that mean, and when are we going to get some new star systems? Star Citizen's procedural tech and tools take many forms in different degrees. They are used to create star systems, planets, moons, cities, outposts, asteroid fields, space stations, missions, encounters, minables, points of interest, and even touches on subsumption. However, a lot of Star Citizen will use procedural generation to help its creation. The method they really use is procedural assistance, whereby artists and devs will handle and edit the finer details of this generated gameplay area, design hero assets and assets for cities, and then place certain pieces in more bespoke locations. Procedural does not mean random or different for every player. Planets, moons, and locations will be the same and physicalized for everyone. It won't be different the next time you visit that location unless there's been something that has affected the area. For example, once we have building in-game and land claims, a player might build an outpost and then move it elsewhere with a pioneer. And if you spawned in after that's been moved, you'll be like, where has that outpost gone? Does not mean that it has disappeared into the ether. It means something has affected it to move its location. Star systems can be built based on their needs using these tools, literally defining the star, the amount of planets, the moons around them, and then any other points of interest, like an asteroid field around Yella, for example. Eventually, the Aaron Halo, a much larger asteroid field, will be added to the Stanton system. Star systems are built to 1/10th scale, and planetary bodies 1/6th scale. These planets and moons will have their own biomes defined, along with gravity and atmosphere. Cities and structures can also be part of this process, or placed later. Although cities will be physicalized, they won't be fully explorable internally. You may be able to fly around them and get pretty close in ships, and they haven't 100% decided exactly what the sort of interaction on giant city planets will be, but just be aware, you're not going to be able to go on the ground on a giant city planet and explore every building. That is just madness. They want to have reasons for you to go to each of these individual locations and for things to be there. So they want shops, mission givers, housing, missions to do on that area. So there might be combat areas and lots of different areas where you can go and travel to on a planet or within a city to do different missions or to do some PvP stuff or to do some espionage or whatever. City areas and buildings are built modularly and can be placed in districts, so they can have commercial districts and industrial districts, so they have different themes but are all sort of like part of the same subset of that city or whatever, so they look like they are supposed to be there. Other parts of the planet can be defined for what mining nodes spawn there, for example, but also they separate this into what outposts are going to be generated there, what wildlife you'll get, what trees, flora, fauna, all that sort of jazz too. The procedural generation and blending of biomes correctly is being tweaked with each patch as well. The way water blends with terrain and where it meets the coastline, and LODs, levels of detail, with popping of assets when travelling down to the planet being addressed currently too. Outposts and points of interest across planets and moons have for the most part at the moment been placed by hand as far as I'm aware, though they can procedurally generate these structures. Where it comes to the gameplay area at the moment, it makes more sense for them to place them by hand because there's not that many to deal with. You can have a collection of outposts, shanty towns, the underground facilities, interesting areas and in biomes, roads, rivers, all eventually entirely procedurally generated though. However, they're almost always going to look at them and go, well, we can move this here and we can tweak this bit here and we can put a statue here and we can do some narrative storytelling, so you can have little props around these areas that will tell a story of what's happened there or who lives there at the moment. That's basically the creation of a system and its planetary bodies, at least the gameplay area side of it. And for the most part, it can be procedurally generated extremely quickly, with only the hero assets and the more hands-on edits taking time. With Lawville on Hurston, for example, they had to hand place and connect the tram system and track. Systems that don't have large cities could be done almost entirely with the procedurally generated content, and therefore significantly quicker. They don't need people to work on statues if there's a system that is not been touched by human hands in lore, unless it's alien, of course, and that's a whole nother kettle of fish, which we'll look at in another video. Stations and rest stops. So these are added to systems so players and NPCs have somewhere to refuel, Again, these can be entirely procedurally generated now. They literally put the size and what rooms and how many hangars and landing pads and shops they want, as well as the brand, because they can have them branded for different areas and the building set they're using, and then these are ready. We currently have small rest stops in the Stanton system, which allow for travel and servicing across the vast gameplay area. They've been placed at Lagrange points, so they're in sensible places for players to get to once they're travelling across vast distances from Crusader to Hurston. They serve as places to do missions and shop as well. We'll probably see these in future systems, just kind of lots of them procedurally placed all over the place around new systems so that players have a lot of places to refuel themselves and not be caught short. And we'll see much larger stations based on these. There's also going to be a lot of more bespoke points of interest or ones that are variants of others. So you'll have the abandoned Gundo Covalex hub, but there'll also be ones that aren't destroyed like we currently have in the standard system. And there's going to be multiple stations that are fully operational, like there's security posts like Korea and things like that. So when are we getting new star systems? New star systems require them to have at least the first iteration of jump points so that you can travel between them. There's no ETA currently, but I'm expecting this to come after full persistence, potentially before server meshing, but probably around the same time. So I'm expecting to potentially see a new system towards the end of 2020. They mentioned looking at proximate systems to Stanton, which would be Pyro, Magnus, and Terra. We only have one star system in the game at the moment, which is Stanton, and it isn't even complete. It requires a few things to sort of deem it at least roughly complete. Arccorp, a huge city planet. Microtech, a cold world with biomes, Nordic forests and snow. Crusader, a gas giant, which currently has a placeholder in the game admittedly, but they're working on gas tech and they need to get that in, and then they can have the Cloud City Orzen there. And basically, that's what they'd like to try and get done in 2019, they've said. Tech-wise, we also require planets to orbit the star, which they currently don't. Various points of interest, including the Aaron Halo and other zones around Stanton, whatever they decide to put in. Delamar Levski, that is planned to be moved out of the Stanton system too at some point. It's supposed to be in the Nix system. I don't know how many systems they're going to have in the game in the next couple of years, but some of them are significantly easier than others to create. Most much easier than the varied Stanton system that we have. Certainly, even if they made a system as complicated, it would be done significantly quicker because the standard system represents the first time they've done a lot of this stuff, and a lot of what they're doing afterwards is just variations of that. A couple like the Sol and Terra systems are going to be significantly harder, in my opinion. They've got very developed cities and they're very built up solar systems. Magnus would require them to make Borea, which is Drake's main HQ, a shipbuilding sort of like city planet there. But there's only two other planets there, a rocky moon type planet and the other a gas giant. Pyro also looks pretty simple for them to do. 3 planets, one of them's a lava-based planet, one of them's a bombarded by solar flares planet, and the other one's sort of like been mined to oblivion, and there's some asteroid fields and stuff like that there as well, some cool things, but it's pretty simple compared to what we already have, and they could deal with this, a lot of this, with procedural tech. Now, the tech and assets for procedural generation of planets, content, and cities is all getting better every patch as well. Building sets and assets, so let's briefly mention this before we end. All textures, assets, walls, worktops, seats, and props are saved to an asset database. Some of these sets are themed for high-tech, industrial, low-tech. These assets can have dozens of uses each and look completely different once they change their color, shader, branding, and materials. They get these variations on them, and then they use them appropriately. So they make this one set of like high-tech equipment, and then they can use it dozens of times for lots of different needs, and you wouldn't even know it was the same wall or whatever. So one of the things I really want to impart here is that they have the ability to procedure generate hundreds of systems, probably this week, if they wanted to. However, based on their current pool of assets, biomes, missions, and content to fill that area, they need to do things in sequence, step by step, and build on their current tech and assets and pool of things they've got. So this is going to be lots of biome stuff and animals and missions, lots of stuff like that. Once they've built more of that out and more variety has been added to their asset pools, then they are able to generate much higher quality systems and potentially a lot quicker as well. Yes, a lot of them will require a lot of bespoke work. Some can be almost entirely procedurally generated though. Missions and encounters, in addition to other players, there's a load of other things that are going to fill these areas. So we're going to have missions, NPC enemies, NPCs that are not enemies, points of interest, events, salvage sites, mineable sites. This content is themed and generated based on the location that it's near or in. So you might have loads of Vandal enemies in a system that's contested by the Vandal, but some areas will have the Xi'an, some will have human pirates, some will have other pirates. There's going to be a lot going on, and it's going to be very different based on what system you're in. And it's going to be dynamic based on what's going on with subsumption and mission generation and players and the story, all that sort of stuff as well. This content's a little bit more volatile and might not persist for a long period of time in each area. So literally it's generated for you or for someone else or based on the needs, and it will sort of like fade back into a simulation that's not physicalized once players have moved on or whatever. But it will eventually take into account many other factors. I think it's worth looking at subsumption in another video, which does look at mission generation, economy, AI, and all that sort of stuff. It's all tied together, and how the God AI sort of like generates all these things, interesting things that are going to happen for you when you're playing the game. The actual content of the areas that you're going into that aren't necessarily job and role based. And with that in mind, we'll also do some videos on those particular jobs and roles like exploration, science, and all the individual breakdown of salvage, medical, even shipboarding, different types of combat. I suppose it's all worth looking at because this is what makes the game. The gameplay area is great. It's huge. It's looking great. They're going to have all of these systems. They've got teams working on that. They've got all these procedural generation tools. But if it's just an open sandbox with nothing much to do, the game wouldn't work. Although it is reasonably fun at the moment, we need gameplay loops. We need roles. We need jobs. And that is coming. If you have any questions about procedural generation, gameplay area, and star systems, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I will try my best to answer them, but what is more likely is someone from my community will go and answer it more accurately than I could. So thank you very much for that. I have a very knowledgeable viewer base, and I do appreciate that. Every month we have a giveaway for a Star Citizen ship. For January, we have a standalone Anvil Carrack, the mighty explorer vessel. All you need to do to be in for a chance of winning is be subscribed to my YouTube channel and then comment on any of my videos released during the month. You can find more details in the comments below. If you don't have a gaming PC yet, or you are upgrading, instead consider Shadow Cloud Gaming. They allow you to leverage the powers of the internet to stream a high-spec Windows 10 environment to any other PC, Mac, or device like a smartphone or tablet. It is working really well in Star Citizen's 3.4 branch, and be sure to use the code BoredGamer if you do decide to check it out to get a discount. Links below. For those of you wanting to support the channel further, there is Patreon, and I will be looking for an alternative platform as well for people that have requested that. But in addition, or as an alternative to that at the moment, there's the YouTube channel memberships, literally the join button below this video, or direct donations via the links below as well. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really does help me. Any feedback or opinions is greatly appreciated and helps guide the channel working out what content is a good idea to put out next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the verse.